First of all, thank you very much for having me. For me today and this entire week is a very special and very personally meaningful time for me to be visiting Israel. So it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I'll cover that a little more at the end. Thank you. So my case study is a story. And the story begins in 2019. Two of Trend Micro's largest customers, chip manufacturers from Taiwan, come to Trend's CEO, Eva Chen, and utter a very simple phrase: help. They need security for the chips, the systems that run their chips, protect their chips. There are adversarial nations that are breathing down their neck for their technology, and they've come to Trend Micro and asked for help. Now, semiconductor manufacturing has an interesting twist to it. The primary concern is to keep production running, and that process is a very, very lengthy one. If there's an outage during that process, that can be a costly amount of damage, and you'd have to basically scrap all of the in-process goods if there is an outage during that process. And don't forget, our little friend came along at the end of 2019, at the beginning of 2020. For my colleagues that are here from Trend Micro that were with us when we had our sales kickoff in January of 2020 in Tokyo, they know that we brought all sorts of little bugs home with us at the beginning of COVID. So just bear in mind that that's also going on at this time, so there's a little bit of chaos. So that same year, Japan's GM answered the call, which I think is one of the most important things in general of this entire week. A point to get across is talking to each other, asking for help, and then showing up and asking, Ech efshar lazor, right? That's what we need to do. So in 2019, Omikawa created TX1, which was a wholly owned subsidiary at the time of Trend Micro. And now, since we're traditionally an IT infrastructure company, we do a lot of IT protection products. Now we have an additional piece to what we can offer our customers in terms of OT security. So we can now bring them a platform that gives them visibility and risk analysis and remediation throughout the whole environment, whether IT or OT. Now, there are challenges for sure in maritime, and since we have begun a project, I don't know how many of you are aware, but we were awarded the Byrd Foundation, Bilateral Research and Development Foundation's Cyber Award recently. We've been working with a firm from Israel called Riskana, and together we're developing solutions for securing seaports, small, medium-sized seaports and airports. So one of the, a few of the challenges that we've seen as we've gone to visit some of these ports, right? We're very interested specifically in the OT, but of course IT as well. The first thing is that the human-machine interface, the HMI in the cranes, is still running legacy operating systems. There's Windows XP. There's Windows XP in many ports. Threat actors know this, right? And they'll be very comfortable exploiting vulnerabilities that exist in Windows XP that, of course, Microsoft isn't going to offer any more patches for. It's end of life. So this is an open door. The PLC in the crane gets remotely accessed from the crane's central control room. Another point where there's potential vulnerability. Not to mention all of the other things that we saw when we visited the port. Imagine that you've got a whole set of logistics planned for a number of ships that are coming to port, and then surprise, we've got another one coming in. We've got to make room for that ship. And oh, by the way, the area that we've created for them to unload isn't monitored by the security cameras that we have watching everybody else. So there's a bit of that as well. And this, on top of these challenges, the security, whatever security solution that we can provide in this OT space has to have a very rugged architecture because it's going to be installed in a harsh environment. Logistics systems, you've got a combination of multi-vendor technologies at the ports, so not very different from what we see in a lot of commercial customers. And the poor souls who are running around trying to take care of this whole environment are craving some kind of situational awareness, some kind of visibility into their risk of their entire environment. They don't have enough people. They need education. They need threat intelligence. These are all things that we've heard so many times from different governments, not to mention not just only the ports, and they just map back to Tamir Gorin talks about 5 pillars. Dadi has mentioned these as well. Threat intelligence and training are so big because the people that are running the ports are so understaffed and so overwhelmed that they need as much help as we can give to them. So in 2022, TX1 becomes an independent company, still very much a critical partner for Trend Micro. And we're starting to see now this very, very critical need for public-private collaboration. I sat in a meeting years ago with one of our largest customers, and the salesperson made a remark that they were using a competitor technology and that this thing was a piece of garbage and you need to replace it with Trend Micro. So the customer stands up and says, hang on, I don't care if you don't get along with this other vendor, because you're not the problem, they're not the problem. The problem is the people that are trying to break into my network and steal my data. So if you can't figure out how to get along, how to talk to each other, wink, wink, and collaborate and figure out how to bolster my security posture instead of battling with each other, then you're out of here. And I think that's a really important message, right? This is what we mean when we're talking about strategy and international cooperation. The point isn't to push each other out of the way. The point isn't that we view another company as our competitor. It's very different in the US that way. Here, it's different in that you've got the right idea. Bring out the best in whomever an organization has invested in. Bring out the best in each one and figure out a way to bring it all together. And that's why I've seen a very big shift, especially in Trend Micro, in our third-party integration, bringing in the other technologies that our customers have invested in so that we can bolster their security posture and not come in and bulldoze our way in and say you have to be running everything Trend Micro. And the other thing too is, and this is a very different time for us because we're making a few shifts around this, it's not all about the shiny new objects and the technology and the software, because we can push as many products and solutions as we want. But the problem is there are fewer and fewer people that are around to run them and administer them and figure out how to use them. And so if you look at some of the statistics, DHS, Homeland Security's labor statistics, I think about 5 years ago, they were saying there was a 300,000 person shortage, labor shortage, and now it's around 700,000. So who are we still trying to sell something to? It would be the question, right? So I think that part of the big shift that we're going to see, and I hope we see, is a little less on the product side and a lot more on the services side, on the threat intelligence side, on how we help, how we show up and say, I am here, how can I help? People, not products, but people. Our COO put out an email the other day and pointed this out precisely, saying that cyber services are where we need to point now for our direction. And that's trend is a very large ship to turn, but that is a really important direction for us to take. Now and for things like AI, we shouldn't just be looking at AI as a way to explain our already confusing products to people, right? AI can be used as to provide services, not just explain products that are getting more and more complicated. But speaking of AI to provide services, how this case study with TX1 comes together. NVIDIA is one of the largest customers of Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company, and whose chips are now protected by TX1. Trend Micro recently announced a partnership with NVIDIA to secure the machines that contain these chips that will be used in the data centers to manufacture intelligence. So it's almost come around full circle, but it started with a call for help and a response. And so we have to continue to show up for each other, because we're not going to defeat threat actors as single entities, as single companies, just living in our own silos, only through strategy and international collaboration and coming together, and not just when it's convenient, and not just when you're scared because a country is being torn apart by war. You still show up. To that end, I did save a few minutes at the end of my presentation to give a special thank you to all of you, because the reason I'm here and the reason I was able to be brought here safely and be here safely is because of every one of you. And to me, that's incredibly special. And so, I don't get a chance too often to say thank you to a room like this. And so I wanted to take full advantage. But know that from the bottom of my heart, how much I appreciate every one of you and everything you're doing to keep the country safe and keep each other safe. And one day the world is going to wake up and realize that there is no world without Israel, and that Israel takes care of everything. They even protect our asses in the United States. So I'm going to sing a little, hopefully with you, because I know you know it. And if you want to join me, great, and if you don't, that's okay too. But my little gift of thank you to you. Yevarechecha Hashem mitzion Urei v'tuv Yerushalayim Yevarechecha Hashem mitzion Kol yemei yemei chayecha Urei vanim levanecha Shalom al Yisrael Urei vanim levanecha Shalom al Yisrael Shalom al Yisrael. עוד משהו שכתבתי. אפילו בחושך הגרוע ביותר, כשהעולם שלכם התהפך, באתם לצידי כדי להגן עליי, לתת את המעט שנותר לכם כדי שאוכל לחיות. אני ישראל, אנחנו ישראל, וביחד לא ניפול. אשריכם כולכם, מקורות האור, הזוהרים ביותר בחושך. תודה רבה מכל הלב.